All right. Um, Hi, thank you everyone for being here. My name is Adriana Cedo Campillo. I'm the events coordinator for the Arizona Hispanic Chamber of Commerce. It's great to see you all here. Thank you for joining us this morning. I would like to briefly introduce and acknowledge our staff members in attendance. We have Elizabeth, which is our director of programs, in case you would like to further extend any conversation after. And we have a lovely guest, a very special. Her name is Laura. She's coming from DeVry University, and I am going to hand it over to her so she can introduce herself and just give you a couple of words of what we're about to learn this morning.
Oh gosh, thank you so much, Adriana. Thank you, Elizabeth. Thank you, Arizona Hispanic Chamber of Commerce. My name is Laura Knapp, and I'm the Dean of Campus and University Partnerships here at DeVry in Southern California. So I'm not in lovely Arizona right now, but isn't this beautiful to be able to connect using technology and Zoom and share ideas and thoughts. And my goal is today to really walk us through the topic of managing change, change management. So that's the topic of today's webinar. We've carved out about an hour to go over this subject. I think it's a very timely subject. And because there is so much change just going on at such a constant and really breakneck speed, and managing that change professionally, personally, not only that, but leading our teammates and our organizations through change is really a hot topic. It's really paramount. So this is what we will walk through today. And I just wanted to thank everyone, for joining us here this morning. I'm going to start with sort of a cliche, and that is change is constant. Change, we always, even before the pandemic, change is a constant. You have to adapt. If you're not running along with the change, then you're falling behind. And I think the pandemic really accentuated that for everyone, where on a moment's notice, right, we had to adopt, technology platforms overnight, in a sense. There was an article in Forbes that talked about how prior to the pandemic, I think 1/3 of all office workers, had some work from home or work remote capabilities. And during the pandemic, basically all people working at a location, office workers, had to change and move and adopt to working 100% remotely, right, to stay safe. So in some way, shape, or form, we have all had to adapt really quickly. It was the CEO of Microsoft, in fact, said that they experienced 2 years of digital transformation, right, in 2 months' time. So 2 years were compacted into 2 months when over 200 million participants joined Microsoft Teams meetings in a single day. So that time frame, think about 2 years into 2 months. That pace of change has really just been, going at warp speed. So, keeping up with it personally, like I said, professionally, but also being able to lead our teams through this change is very key. So today we're going to talk about, and on the next slide, today's agenda, we're going to talk about, what is change management? Change management is the ideas that we're not just letting change happen, we're not just letting it occur, we're not just letting things kind of go. As managers, as company owners, entrepreneurs, right, leaders within our own organizations, right, we are managing that change for people. We're helping lead people through change, okay? We're going to talk about the common barriers to change. If getting through change and managing change were easy, I wouldn't be talking about it today. You wouldn't be, signing up for this webinar. It's not necessarily something that comes naturally to any of us. There's that whole human nature piece, that maybe some of us are more resistant to change, or we need to understand more about the change, right, before we really buy into it. So what are those barriers to change? I'm going to talk about those barriers. Okay, and then we're going to talk about how to lead, not just in the midst of change, but how to lead people through that change successfully so that you're leading your company to success. I do want to underline that this webinar, shouldn't be just me, kind of one-to-many talking. I would love to hear everybody's experiences. Take yourselves off mute, that's fine, or go ahead and feel free to use chat, right? And let us know about your experiences, with change. I think we're going to be enriched by your best practices and learning about your challenges. Okay, so feel free to, don't be shy. Like I said, take yourselves off mute and feel free to leverage chat. So on the next slide, before you're a leader, this is Jack Welch, before you're a leader, success is all about growing yourself. And once you become a leader, it's about growing others. So once again, as business owners and leaders, it is up to you to motivate, support, and lead your teams from point A to point B, avoiding as many roadblocks as possible with a focus on developing the people around you as well. Okay, and really, really important. I should mention that in today's competitive talent, acquisition landscape, this is so important as talent attraction and retention has become more challenging, right? We want to make sure that our efforts are helping to retain talent, right? And build loyalty among our employees, okay? We don't want to increase flight risk. People talk about flight risk and the mass resignation, right? Typically, the business owners and leaders that I'm talking with, they want to retain their talent. They want to grow their talent. They want to develop that talent organically and internally, because finding people on the outside has become even more challenging, right? In this day and age, there's just a lot of competition for talent. There's a lot of different issues that are going on out there. So our focus today is how do we lead change in a way that, kind of creates that loyalty and that growth and that stickiness, among our employees, as opposed to kind of scaring them off, right? Okay, so moving right along, and I should mention that at the end of the day, on this next slide, change management really is people management. I think sometimes we think about change management as being either or. There's organizational transitions, there's new platforms that we're putting into place, right? Where there's new software platforms that we're bringing in. There's a merger and acquisition, maybe there's a new product that we're rolling out, and that these are things, right? These are the processes, the products that are changing. But really the best kind of change leadership comes from understanding that all of those changes affect people. They affect our employees, okay? They affect our teammates, they affect us, they affect our clients, our partners. There is such a people element. And really the ideal kind of change management absolutely takes that into account. The ideal change management factors in that human aspect, okay, into change management. I'm just going to break and pause for a minute. I'd like to hear from our audience briefly. Feel free to share via chat or take yourselves off mute, as I mentioned. What are some of the changes that your organizations are going through right now, or have gone through recently, or are planning for in the future? Right? What are some of the changes that you're currently going through right now as an organization? And I will go ahead and pull up chat. Okay, staff changes. Yep, absolutely. Absolutely. We just rolled out a new iteration of our Salesforce platform. So it's not a major change, right? We had Salesforce before, we still have it, but it's sort of a makeover, and it was put in, in place for various reasons to help, with pipeline management and customer management, and yet it's different, right? It's a different UI. It's something that all of us are dealing with. It's something that affects all of us users, i.e. human beings, right? And so there's this sort of, a change management effort that's going along with this new rollout. Any other changes that folks are experiencing currently? Yeah, feel free, like I said, to share. Would love to hear from you. Would love to hear from all of you. Okay. Moving right along to our next slide. This is a visual, just a really quick visual, I think, that's useful to take a look at. And this is really, this is from an author and coach and change guru named William Bridges. And William Bridges wrote a book called Managing Transitions. And if you look at this model, basically the first dot is our current state, where we are right now. This dot to the left, current state. Okay, this is where we are right now. The second dot is where we return to equilibrium. Okay, and there's this line that sort of dips down. Okay, and that line that is dipping down is actually measuring productivity and performance. Okay, and so typically with any significant change that your organization experiences or that you're, managing people through, there will be a dip in performance or productivity. So even thinking back to, the pandemic, when we all had to go work from home, they sent our laptops home, and, we sent our students home, no more classroom, let's go home and let's do it all from home. And even though it was very efficient, I think we, here at DeVry, we had a very quick transition. There's still a couple of days. There's still a time frame where people are either waiting for their laptops, or maybe they don't understand, or they're having challenges adapting. Okay, how many of us experienced, any of those challenges adapting, or saw people around us struggling with those changes during the pandemic, or during any change that you may be leading, currently at the moment? There is going to be a dip. There's going to be a dip, but that dip, it's temporary. Right? It is temporary. We come back to equilibrium. And the idea is that the changes that we're putting in place, I guess with the pandemic, we were forced to change, right? But the Salesforce rollout, right, is being put in place, because we see the future benefit, right? Any change, any new product rollout, you're putting it out there for benefit, increased revenues, right? Better client satisfaction. Okay, there's going to be a positive. And so there's going to be an increase. We're looking for a return on our investment. Okay, that comes later. That comes later through the change. But we do want to realize that return on investment as soon as possible, right? We want to, i.e., return to equilibrium as soon as we possibly can. Okay, it's when people unfortunately get, maybe don't understand the change, when there's issues with a product launch. Maybe there's issues understanding why we're rolling out a new platform, right? When there's challenges understanding and adapting to that change, that dip in productivity can be prolonged. Okay, so here, in this red line, in between this red line and this green line, is where conflict and change managers, really come to play. This is where you come to play. Okay, this is where you as leaders can really make a difference by getting your organization back to equilibrium, sooner rather than later. Okay, so today we're going to talk about sort of, the tips and the tricks. We're going to talk about the change process so that you know where you are, in any given change cycle. Okay, so on the next slide, we're going to talk about a little bit first. What are the qualities of a good change leader, right? What are the qualities that we want you to sort of embody, as a change leader at your organization, at the company that you own? What are the qualities of a leader who can help get their team from point A to point B along the most efficient path? What are they? And I guess I'm going to ask, our audience, what are the qualities that you embody anytime that you're walking your team through change? Or what are the qualities that you have seen in really excellent change agents, change managers? Okay, transparency, absolutely. Thank you. Thank you, Nancy. Yeah, in transparency, I'm assuming you mean communication, right? Clear communication. This is why we're changing. This is, what it means to all of us, right? This is going to be the impact, positive, negative, neutral, sort of that honesty and that transparency and that communication that I think, people need. People want to know, why are we, what's the why behind this? Why does it matter? How does it impact me? Right? Any other qualities that you might add to transparency? 100% though, I would say, absolutely. Transparency is a big one. And I'm going to go to the next slide. We'll sort of, we'll jump to the chase, right? So the characteristics of successful change leaders, according to research, are, basically that emotional awareness, I think, that makes any leader, kind of a better, stronger leader. Somebody with a lot of self-awareness, somebody with a sense of curiosity, right? The ability to probe for understanding and meeting, empathetic listeners, clear communicators, people who are willing to learn and to commit, to lead through this change. According to the Center for Creative Leadership, the best change leaders communicate, collaborate, and commit. It's sort of the 3 C's: communicate, collaborate, and commit. In terms of communication, it is that transparency. Being able to talk about the what and the why. Okay, according to the Center for Creative Leadership, unsuccessful leaders tend to focus just on the what. What is it? Okay, it's a new platform. Great. Why? Why are we rolling out this new platform? Include the why as you communicate with your team. Okay, leaders who explain the purpose of the change and connected it to the organization's values, or explain the benefits very clearly, created a stronger buy-in and an urgency for change. Collaborate, that second C. Bringing people together to plan and execute change is critical, right? Bringing people together. Successful leaders work across boundaries, right? They encouraged employees to break out of their silos, and they refuse to tolerate unhealthy competition per se. That kind of unhealthy competition of, where people maybe stop sharing information, right? Whatever you consider unhealthy, collaboration, right? Unhealthy communication. They refuse to put up with it. They included employees in the decision-making process early on, okay, which helped to strengthen their commitment to the change. Unsuccessful change leaders failed to engage employees early on and throughout the change process. So I think getting folks involved as soon as you possibly can and keeping them involved throughout the process is a very key piece of that collaboration, okay? And then the third C of the 3 C's is commit. So successful leaders, as opposed to unsuccessful change leaders, really made sure that their own beliefs and behaviors supported the change, okay? Change is difficult, but leaders who negotiated it successfully were resilient, they were persistent, okay? They were willing to step outside of their comfort zones 100%. They devoted more of their own time to the change effort while focusing on the big picture, okay? And not getting caught up in the little details, the change. Whereas unsuccessful leaders failed to adapt to the challenges, because, right, every change effort, there's probably going to be some challenges. Maybe everything doesn't go perfectly or according to plan. So successful leaders will adapt to those challenges, right? And unsuccessful leaders will not, will have a tendency not to adapt, and they'll express more negativity. They'll express impatience with a lack of results, right? So as successful change leaders and change agents, we want to make sure that we're staying positive, we're adapting, we're not getting frustrated, or at least we're not communicating that frustration negatively, right? And we're just trying to stay patient. There will be challenges, okay? I guarantee you 100%. So staying patient and just working through that change, very key part. of any successful change leader. On the next slide, we're going to talk a little bit about those barriers. Okay, the barriers to change. Okay, I talked a little bit, I alluded to human nature. These are the top 8 challenges. This was published by PMI, okay, Project Management Institute. And the first 4 of these bullets are really about institutional and organizational barriers. Okay, so organizational culture, right? What's the culture of your company? What's the structure? What are the politics looking like? Has there been continual restructuring? Right? Sometimes companies get into that mode of just continuous restructuring, trying to find that perfect balance. And oftentimes, if it's too much restructure, that can create a certain cynicism, right, among employees and among teammates. Okay, unclear purpose and sponsorship, inconsistent communication. Okay, so these are institutional and organizational barriers. Now, I'm assuming, we are all, leaders in our companies. We may be business owners, right? So a single person, though, is not enough, to set that culture, to set that structure. This is a bigger dynamic that oftentimes is larger even than the business owner. That said, whatever you can do to impact positively that structure, right, to make it more amenable to change, right, and welcoming to change, whatever you can do there is awesome. But it's really the last 4 bullet points that are more about human nature and the change process that we're going to be able to control more readily. Does that make sense? So these last 4 bullet points, the speed at which people pass through various stages of change, right? Understanding that speed and understanding that everyone's different. Some people are faster than others for different reasons, right? Understanding and communicating well the losses involved in not changing, right? What are the things that our company would lose out on if we didn't go through with this change, right? Understanding that and communicating that is a key part to being a good leader. Understanding, where are the misconceptions about the value or the purpose of the change? Getting to those root misunderstandings and clarifying those misunderstandings are going to be very key. And then also just understanding the way the brain functions, right? And we can't change the way the brain functions, but oh my gosh, spoiler alert, the brain likes comfort, right? Maybe we know this and understand this, but the brain likes comfort. We like, as human beings, to know what we're doing any given day. We like to be in that equilibrium, state. Okay, knowing what our job is. And as soon as there is change, that can be challenging. That is just human nature. So understanding human nature, I think, and getting, to the root of it and staying in, kind of focusing on controlling the controllable, right? People's need for safety and comfort will be huge as you move forward with any change, right? Any change project. Okay, let's move on to the next slide. Feel free to, any questions, feel free to share. And once again, any challenges that you all are experiencing with change at your organization, we would all love to hear. We have a poll here. Would love to ask you, right, of these, barriers that you've seen in the past, what have been the greatest in facing change? Right? What have been your greatest challenges in facing change? Right? What would you call out as being the toughest thing? Not enough understanding of the change, maybe a lack of leadership, not enough engagement, no buy-in, not enough resources or training, a lack of communication. Please feel free to share with us. Yeah. What have been the biggest challenges that you've seen, right? And I guess we'll, give folks a little bit more time to go ahead and complete this poll. Just out of curiosity, what have you seen to be the greatest challenges in change? Okay, anybody else? I think we have one person. Okay. Looks like no engagement buy-in is leading the way. All right. I think we're going to go ahead and end this poll. Okay. All right. And I'm, Adriana, not sure if that's, yeah, if we're able to share the results of that poll. Okay. 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 Awesome. Awesome. Okay. Great, great, great. So greatest challenges that we've seen in terms of, you know, change at our organizations, no engagement buy-in. Okay. This is, you know, and this is a tough one, right? No engagement, no buy-in, right? From the people that are experiencing the change. And maybe it's the people who are leading the change as well, right? If you don't have executive sponsorship, that can be a big, big challenge as well. And then certainly if people are just kind of not adapting or adopting to the change, huge challenge, right? These are tough ones. And again, it's, you know, that human nature, I think, that we want to sort of take a minute to understand and just be sensitive, you know, to as we walk and we lead people through change. Okay, so on the next slide, okay, we're just going to dig a bit deeper into how people experience change and that human element that I talked about. Okay, so we'll just go to the next slide. Perfect. And actually the slide after that, we're going to talk about, we're going to go back to William Bridges, our author and our change agent, the author of Managing Transition. He talks about a lot about how human beings, right, all of us experience change. Okay, and I think the first thing leaders should do is, you know, to kind of understand this human reaction. Humans experience all kinds of emotions related to change. Everybody reacts differently. Resistance is normal. It's not always logical, right? So don't expect logical reactions. I think that can be a challenge as leaders. We're like, oh my gosh, this is so logical. It's so obvious. You know, what's being missed here. So resistance is normal. It's not always logical. Just be ready for that. Even when people start to accept change, adjusting to the change does take time. Change requires individual energy as well as risk and emotional investments. Okay, there are specific strategies, however, to help folks get through change, and the role of the manager is to help, you know, people understand these transitions and allow them to work through the process. On the next slide, right, we're going back to Bridges' model. And the way Bridges would suggest that we see change is that it's a three-phase process. Okay, the process starts at the end of the former state, whatever that former state was. And so managing transition involves helping people through these three phases: the ending phase, the transition phase, and the new beginning phase. So generally, the psychological transitions that people go through during change are uncertainty, and we see this on the slide here at the ending phase, uncertainty. And then we proceed through skepticism, exploration, and commitment, okay, these are also listed on the chart. This line here, again, does represent performance or productivity, just like it did in the other chart. Okay, so the phases of change, according to William Bridges, we're starting at the end, right? So maybe contrary to our instinct, we're thinking that change starts with a change, right? But really what we need to do is help our teams sort of say goodbye to what has been, to the former way of doing things, right? We're getting through this ending phase where their former way of doing things is ending, okay? And we're helping people deal with that uncertainty and then skepticism as they transition forward and move into this new beginning. Okay, so these are the 3 phases of change. Moving right along to the next slide. Failure to identify and prepare for endings and losses is the largest difficulty for people in transition. Okay, failing to prepare for the endings and losses. Once again, that human need for comfort, routine, known systems, etc. Okay, so let's, be very, very sensitive to this ending phase. And on the next slide, okay, we're going to talk about this ending phase. Okay, when there's change, people will react differently to it, right? To the fact that some things are going to end. Endings are a natural part of the transition process. And when you recognize the emotions and behaviors involved, it should be easier for you to guide folks, through this transition. Okay, if you think about it, an ending can be positive or negative, seen as either a loss or a gain. So we have to be ready to react to both scenarios. Okay, and even when there's an intellectual understanding for the need for change, there's not always emotional acceptance. The emotional acceptance may take longer. With endings, there's almost always a reluctance to let go of old ways. It takes time for people to become comfortable and get into these new routines of doing things. And sometimes leaders can perceive this lack of readiness as resistance, right? But oftentimes this is just a really natural part of adjustment, completely normal. Okay, and I think as leaders, we just have to, be aware, and be patient, right? That we are going through an end phase. And people may be very excited, for the future. There's still maybe sort of a time that they need to adjust to the new way of doing things. On the next slide, endings, looking at it in a positive light can be looked at as celebrations, right? When you finish school, there's a graduation ceremony. With a retirement, we send our colleagues off with a big party. So there can be very positive feelings and behaviors associated with change. Okay, a good way to help, acknowledge the end phase is don't just ignore that the old way is going away. Maybe, I don't know, if there's a way to celebrate it in some way, of having a going away party or a sending off party, right? This is one way to deal positively, with that ending phase. Okay, the old platform is going away, right? We're having staff changes, people are leaving, right? Celebrating those staff changes, right? If people are leaving, definitely acknowledge that. Take the time to acknowledge. And as new people come on board, take the time to acknowledge them and celebrate them, right? Let's really underline this ending phase in a positive way. Okay, on the next slide, there can be challenging emotions and behaviors as well at the ending phase. There could be anger over loss. There could be bargaining to avoid change. There could be denial, decreased involvement. This is almost mirroring sort of the stages of grief, that if you're familiar with that model, it's very, very similar, right? So denial, I can't believe this is happening, or I don't believe it's going to happen. I don't think it'll be successful. Bargaining to avoid change, people coming to you and saying, hey, look, if I do this, can I keep, this, right? Decreased involvement, people check out. Again, that lack of buy-in that we saw in the poll. So decreased involvement, people just, completely checking out. How do we deal, right? On the next slide, we're going to talk about how we deal, with these challenging behaviors. Okay, it's important to identify and, kind of identify these feelings of loss during transition, right? And deal with these feelings so that you can move on and focus on the future. I think ignoring the challenging, feelings, the feelings of loss, you're just going to end up prolonging them. So I think really the focus is identifying them. What are people feeling that they're losing? Acknowledging, that sense of loss and coming up with strategies, right, to help really replace what people are feeling that they're losing. Okay, so some examples, relationships are changing, right? Maybe relationships are changing, people, teams, organizational structure is changing. And so the strategy that you want to take is, how can we replace, right, these attachments? How can we fill in these gaps per se? People may be feeling like they're losing influence, areas of responsibility, their status, things that they identified with formally. Okay, how can you help them sort of get to a new stage? How can you help fill in that loss? Identify that loss and help them redirect to their new sphere of influence that they're going to have. Okay, structure is changing, time and place of work, schedule, routines, procedures. Once again, how can you help folks overcome their feelings of loss and start, with a new beginning? Meaning what the organization stands for. If a company has acquired another company, right, or there's a name change, or maybe we're going to be, serving a new market, the sense of meaning, is maybe going away. And so you're going to want to make sure that you're filling in, with a new sense of meaning. On the next slide, okay, we're going to talk about 4 tangible strategies that you can put in place during this phase, the ending phase. Okay, you're going to want to commit to frequent communication about the change. Okay, here we're really aiming for probably over communication. In a sense, we want to over communicate what the change is. Okay. The second strategy is transparency, making sure that you have a plan for clear, consistent, and transparent communication. Okay, so we're going to want to layer in, we're going to want to have a strategy for communication, right? We're going to want to make sure that we are adding time in to communicate the change. Gosh, in any one-on-one meetings, any team huddles, right? Weave it into conversation, but make sure you plan to have that communication in place. Sometimes we forget to communicate because it's not on the agenda. Right? So if you can add communication as an agenda item, communication or information about the change, then that is going to kind of force you to remember to talk about that change and make sure that you're filling in any blanks, that people may have about it. Okay. Strategy 3, practice active listening. Don't do all the talking. Spend time listening and understanding how your team members are adjusting. Don't assume that you know where they are before you provide, answers and responses. Okay. How do you ensure that you're actively listening? Just want to ask the folks on the call, what are your strategies for active listening? Anybody on the call, feel free to chat. Do you have any go-to, kind of approaches when you're in active listening mode? Feel free to share. Feel free to share or take yourselves off mute. Active listening. In my mind, when I'm having to practice active listening, it's really kind of backing up and sort of making sure that I'm not rushing to judge what the person is saying and really giving them a safe space to a certain extent, right? Just, share what their feelings and their reactions and their challenges are. I think, there's a tendency we don't want, endless venting, right? But really discerning what is, kind of constructive feedback that we need to understand in order to help that person and the team move forward, right? So not rushing to a judgment, not rushing to an answer per se. Oh, I know what you're going to say. Here's the answer. here's what you have to do, right? Giving folks time and space to share, and then backing up and really kind of thoughtfully addressing their concerns, I think would be, kind of my go-to tip for active listening, which helps us to seek understanding, right? It's not jumping to conclusions, not jumping to solving problems. As leaders, as managers, I think we want to solve problems as quickly as possible, right? But oftentimes we're going to save time in the long run by being a very active listener and by seeking understanding, okay? Knowing where your team is will help you create a plan to help them move ahead, right? If your team knows that you understand what their feedback is and where it's coming from, they are more apt to understand what information you're providing them and trust your guidance and buy in, okay? So all we're trying to accomplish here during this phase is, that transition from uncertainty. All we're trying to get to right here is to skepticism, right? We're moving from uncertainty to skepticism. So don't expect to win the war at this point, right? This is just the first phase where we're hoping to move folks from not understanding, from uncertainty to like, oh my gosh, what is this change bringing? To kind of understanding it, but maybe not believing it, maybe having a healthy sense of skepticism. That's actually considered a positive in this phase. Okay, so don't seek wholehearted acceptance at this point. We're just walking through the end to get to our transition phase, which during transition, we're going to see more exploration and so on and so forth. Okay, but at this point, we're just walking to get past, we're hoping to get past that uncertain phase. Okay, so on our next slide, let's talk about transition. You know what? Let me back up though. I'd like to talk about this ending phase just really, really briefly. Yeah, and see if there are any questions. Any questions from anybody on the Zoom? Feel free to share. Any questions? Any comments? Right? Any surprises? Okay, let's move on then to the next slide. So the second phase of change is the transition phase, right? Pros and cons of the transition phase. We're moving from skepticism, healthy skepticism, hopefully, to an exploratory phase where people are starting to feel comfortable. They're starting to explore. Oh my gosh, with the staff changes that you mentioned earlier, we're starting to get to know our new colleagues, right? We're exploring, we're having conversations, right? We're having dialogues, we're talking. With the new platform that I talked about that we're rolling out, we're hopefully seeing people engage in that platform and use it and make mistakes and, try to do something new. We're looking for not necessarily 100% adoption, but at least we want to make sure people are in there, they're using it, they're actively, trying to make it work for them. They're exploring it, they're asking questions. Okay, so this transition phase. The transition phase can be frustrating. Anybody know why this transition phase may be really, really frustrating? Any guesses as to why this can be one of the most frustrating phases or challenging phases for us as leaders? Thoughts? Okay, I'll fill in the blanks. Yeah, definitely. This time frame coincides with the lowest productivity. Yeah, unknown reactions from employees and leaders. Yep, absolutely. And it actually, this is where we're going to see kind of the lowest dip, the lowest point of productivity for our organization. So this is where, they say it's, darkest before the light. This is where we're going to see, just the lowest levels of productivity. And it makes us uncomfortable as leaders, no? Right? to see that, productivity dipping. That said, as we walk through transition, we're seeing productivity pick up towards the end phases of transition. Okay, let's move on to the next slide. During transition, I'm going to talk about strategies, right? I'm going to talk about what we see, during this phase, and kind of transition strategies to get us through it. What we're going to see on the positive side is hopefully, questions being asked, people asking for information, a growing sense of opportunity, and again, that exploration, people looking forward, right? And thinking about, oh my gosh, I actually can do things, better, faster, more efficiently with this new platform, right? With the staff changes, questions are coming up. We need more information. We're feeling positive. Okay. Challenging behaviors that we may see, however, include on the next slide. This is where we're going to see, resistance. It could be covert resistance, right? Overt resistance. Depression, let's be frank, right? People are, again, it's those stages of grief. Okay, so we may sense a low energy, right? Low or no involvement. That feeling of, oh my gosh, lack of buy-in. At its very worst, you may sense sabotage, even aggression. Okay, hopefully not. Most likely, you're going to see inconsistent productivity. Again, that dip in productivity, we're definitely going to see. Okay. On the next slide, I'm going to talk about, how to help people get through this transition zone, right? How are we helping people get through? And again, it's helping them kind of process the loss that they may be feeling, right? Loss of control, loss of understanding, somebody who feels like they've been expert on the former way of doing things, and now they're no longer the expert, right? And they have to relearn, okay? Right? It's important for us to give people time to rebuild their understanding, okay? Support. People in transition zone need to feel that they're not alone, right? They need to feel that you and the organization supports them, right? And purpose. If they feel like, oh my gosh, they're not exactly sure, what their purpose is now that things have changed, right? You really want to underline, what that purpose is, right? If they're feeling lost, make sure that they're connecting to the new purpose, right? And why this change is being put into place, and why and how it's positively, going to impact your company and your organization, right? Any ideas, any strategies, any ideas that you'd like to share on how to give people back that sense of control, that sense of understanding, sense of support and purpose? Yeah, how can you help fill these buckets in a sense, right? Yeah, be inclusive, absolutely. Bring people to the table. If people are being very quiet, you're not hearing from certain people, take them aside, maybe after a meeting that everyone's spoken at, and see what their feedback truly is, right? Kind of insist that everybody do, kind of contribute how they're feeling. They may not want to do it in public at first. They may not want to contribute in a team meeting. Take them aside after that meeting and listen, make that commitment to listening, to what they're saying, and making sure that they know that you understand where they're coming from. Okay. Moving right along, a couple of different on our next slide. During this phase, we really want to capitalize on creativity. Okay. So, there's this feeling of, okay, there's a dip in productivity. Everything is different. We're having to, kind of learn new ways of doing things, get to know new people, right? Capitalize on the creativity that innately is part of this phase, right? There can be the sense of chaos that naturally can give rise to new ways of thinking, right? Capitalize on this. This is a great time for creative thinking and getting folks to share best practices and ideas, right? Okay. Ask yourself, this is a great time to ask yourself how you're doing personally with the changes. Are you getting the support you need to adjust to the new way of operating, right? As you expect other people to change, you have to lead by example, right? So if you're struggling with a change, make sure you seek support from a peer, a mentor, your boss, or from an outside resource, okay? Continue to listen, continue to coach, find the ways to motivate, okay? Keep everyone up to date and informed on things as they, as you progress through this transition phase. Stay in touch, celebrate quick wins, continue to share information, openly acknowledge and recognize when somebody on your team is leading in the right way, and share examples of leadership behaviors you expect to see in the future. Okay, moving right along to our next slide. Okay, you're going to notice that you're moving out of this transition phase when productivity picks up, right? It's starting to pick up. You're seeing people explore, and you're seeing people starting to commit, right, to the new change and the next, phase of things. Okay. When you see productivity picking up, we know we're in this last and final phase of change, the new beginning, right? And on our next slide, we're going to talk about, different behaviors that we're going to be seeing, both positive and, what I would consider challenging. Okay, on the positive side, we'll move to the next slide. We're going to see increased teamwork, okay, propensity to learn new skills, sort of a settling into new routines, a positive regard for change, and increased input and productivity. Okay, so we're going to know, that we're sort of in that home stretch when we see, sort of these positive behaviors. That said, on the next slide, we may also be confronted with a couple of other challenges. We'll go ahead to our next slide. Still a sense of uncertainty, some nervousness. Sometimes people are unsure, are they taking on more responsibilities, or just different responsibilities, right? How has their job role changed? Are they needing to put in more time, right, now in their role, right? Or maybe they're unused to a faster pace. So here is where you're definitely going to want to remind people what is in it for them, right? New skill sets, okay? New opportunities, for them to learn new things, right? Something perhaps that they can put on their resume. What is in it for me, right? A more efficient way of doing things, new team members, new staff, right? Creates new opportunities to engage, right? And move forward as a company. Okay, but at this point, there should be really more positive, I guess, constructive behaviors, than challenging behaviors that you're seeing. Really, the positive should be outweighing anything. We're going to go to our next slide, and I know I'm almost getting up on time. Would love to hear, any questions from you as we go. In the new, sort of this end phase, which we call the new beginnings, phase, there's a lot of strategies that will help us consolidate this change and sort of make sure that it's really cemented, right? It's really sticking. And a couple of these strategies include, again, we talked about celebrating endings. I think celebrating beginnings are really important. If we have 100% adoption in the new platform, how can we celebrate that, right? It doesn't have to be hard. It doesn't have to be a huge, party. But how do we celebrate? How do we mark this new beginning, right? Once our staff is settled in and they've all been trained, is there something we can do? Can we take folks out, to lunch? Can we bring in coffee or snacks? how can we celebrate, this new beginning? This is also a wonderful time, okay, to clarify or re-clarify, I should say, roles and responsibilities, continue to provide clear direction, right? It's still sort of a new phase, so we want to continue. We don't want to, I guess, stop too soon in our change management. We want to make sure that we're continuing to over communicate, right? We want to consider how the change integrates into other areas of our department and the company. We want to continue to underline the why, the what, and the how. And we're going to definitely keep acknowledging and rewarding, right, the behaviors that we want to see. Okay, next slide. At the end of the day, we want to be the change. This is a very big quote, but I think it definitely supports this whole topic of change management. We want to be the change that we want to see in the world. We want to be the change in our companies by modeling the change and consistently emulating, right, the change that we want to see. Okay, you must be the change you wish to see in the world. And if you can do that, if you can commit to the change and really be the change, I think 100% you have successfully, been a successful change agent at your organization. Okay. As we wrap up, any questions? I know we were right on time. I'm just going to go ahead and jot my contact, right, information here in the chat box. Change management, it's really sort of a discipline of project management. And I don't know if there are any project managers, on the phone here, but dealing with change is, it's definitely a constant. It's something that's taught at the university level. It's something that DeVry, actually, we have classes in change management. We have several project management degree programs. And the good news is that we are working on a partnership right now with the Arizona Hispanic Chamber of Commerce on providing a free course and a tuition reduction for member companies and their employees. So if you've thought about, kind of investing in the learning and development of your staff and your employees, this is something that absolutely, I'd be happy to share more information with you if you do have questions about it. And I'm going to go ahead and type in my email address, okay, as well as my phone number. If you'd like to learn more about this tuition reduction partnership this would be for not only you, but as I mentioned, all employees of member companies as well as their family members. Okay, so once again, if you're looking to invest in yourself or in your employees, if project management and change management is something that you'd like to learn formally, I'd invite you to, just simply reach out to me. I wanted to thank you so very much. I think we're at time, so I'm going to wrap up and just thank you very much for your time. And just last call for questions. Wanted to see if anybody on the chat had any questions for me regarding change management or some of the techniques we talked about. Okay, well, without further ado, I'm going to give you, thank you so much. This hour has gone by so quickly. Okay, how to deal with pushback. Not sure if that was discussed, right? Pushback is definitely something that you will see in that transition phase, like covert and even overt resistance and even aggression. I have a conflict management webinar that I also give. Bottom line, Nancy, it boils down to really taking a step back and redoubling one's efforts in terms of just, kind of listening, understanding communication modes, right? And addressing concerns in a way that is going to sort of resonate with the person that is doing the pushback. Okay, so it goes back to understanding communication styles, sort of that DISC assessment that I'm not sure if you've been through. I'm sure we have an understanding of our own communication styles, but understanding other people's communication styles right? And kind of personality habits is going to be key in order to, address that pushback, and then it kind of depends on the level of pushback, right? And how harsh it is, because sometimes at the very, sometimes it does end up being something that has to be dealt with HR and elevated and escalated. But typically a lot of, pushback is just sort of a natural reaction that can be addressed. And I'm happy to, oh my gosh, I can provide more information on my conflict management webinar, or I'd be happy to, see you. I think we have a couple of other webinars that we have scheduled. And if conflict management is not one of them, it's something that we can definitely add and talk a little bit more about conflict management as well. Any other questions? Oh my gosh, thank you so much. Thank you so much, everyone, for your time.
Thank you,
And
Lauren.
yeah, absolutely. It's my pleasure. Feel free to be in touch separately. If you'd like, just email me. And Nancy, I'm happy to, like I said, provide you a bit more information about pushback and discuss that a little bit more with you if you'd like offline. But my time is up. So thank you so much. Wanted to wish you a wonderful, wonderful day and rest of your Tuesday and rest of your week and rest of your summer. And I hope to hear from you soon. I hope to see you at future webinars, and we'll take it from there. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Laura. And I just want to give you a quick virtual applause. Laura Knapp, everyone from DeVry University. We will make sure to forward her information to all of you so you can keep in touch. And from part of the Chamber, we thank you so much, Laura, for being a part of this Business Bootcamp this morning. And before everybody starts logging out, we have a brief message. We are going to have a social media ticket giveaway for The Lion King, which is a musical that is playing at the ASU Gammage. If you guys are interested in entering, please go onto our Instagram page, which is AZHCC.com. And that will have further information on how to enter that giveaway, and do that before Friday, because that will be the day when the winner will be announced. And for anybody sticking in for for the Business Bootcamp's member orientation, please stick with us. And thank you
Thank you so much. Yeah, have a great day.
Yeah, you too. Thank you.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye. Okay.
So we also have a Diamondbacks ticket winner. Adriana, do you want to announce the winner?
Yes, I'm so sorry. Give me one moment. And the winner for our D-Batch tickets would be Nancy Vargas. Congratulations, Nancy. We will contact you as of how you can get these tickets. And thank you so much again for everybody who attended our event. And like I said, if you are sticking for member orientation, please bear with us. And thank you.